Good afternoon. Welcome to the Financial Times headquarters for this Banker Roundtable in association with VTB Capital. Our subject today, Financing Russia's Companies, New Approaches for New Times. I'm Philip Alexander. I'm the finance editor of the Banker magazine, and the rest of our panel will now introduce themselves.
I'm ALEXEY, YAKOVITSKY, CEO of VTB Capital Moscow.
I'm Liam Halligan. I'm Chief Economist of Prosperity Capital. We're the largest asset manager in the region.
I am Dominique Fache. I am the head of NL for Russian CIS and the chairman of OGK5.
I'm YURI SOLOVIEV, President and Chief Executive Officer of VTB Capital.
KARL Johansson, Managing Partner, Ernst & Young, Moscow.
Ilya Yakobson, Dixie Group, Russia.
John Edwards, Senior Manager for CIS Business Development at the London Stock Exchange.
I'm Herbert Moss. I am a Chief Executive Officer of VTB Capital PLC, and I'm responsible for the international strategy of VTB Capital.
If we can kick off really talking about the scale of financing needs in Russia at the moment. And I mean, Yuri, I was looking earlier today at a list of about 125 Russian companies that were considering IPOs in 2007 before things changed substantially in global finance. I was wondering, how many companies are you aware of now that are certainly looking at IPOs internationally once market conditions begin to permit thinking about that?
I think the second part of your question, once the market conditions would permit it, has a lot of implication here, because obviously multiples collapsed, the valuation of the companies collapsed, and many owners in this point in time, from my perspective, would not really consider going and tapping international capital markets in terms of IPO issuance. However, we do have a growing number of Russian companies who would like or who would need to refinance their debt or have access to the international debt capital markets again. And this number of those companies is probably much bigger than 125.
And I mean, are there particular sectors where the refinancing needs are concentrated?
I mean, clearly there are a number of sectors which used to be relatively leveraged. We're talking about the financial sector in the first place. Then we probably take those which traditionally have relatively large leverage. It's metals, mining. Obviously, we cannot forget real estate. Some of the retail sector, in their expansion and grabbing market share, obviously leverage themselves to a certainly high level. Those would be the sectors, in my view, which are in relatively high need of refinancing.
And if you're thinking about your own company, I know you recently refinanced a loan with Alpha Bank and VTB. Does the company have any other sort of significant refinancing needs, or are you even considering financing for expansion at some point in the future?
Well, you say, in general, I think that this crisis is a great opportunity for Russian retailers, especially for public companies, because very great number of small retailers, they are kind of dying now. They have a lot of problems because of just because of their weaknesses like short-term debt, financing long-term assets, and so on and so forth. From this perspective, I think that in the nearest future, this year and the next year, we'll be able just to have fast growth. And you know that fast growth means attracting new capital. So we might be interested in the nearest future, maybe in the next year, to attract new debt, to attract new shareholders, to attract new equity. I think that's not only possible, we just hope and we're absolutely sure that this will be the case.
And when you say attracting new debt or shareholders, would those be purely inside Russia, or you would also look at the international markets as well?
Well, you say, I think that we'll try to do it internationally. For example, last year in the end of October, we were going just to have initial public offering in London, but due to the circumstances, due to the crisis, we decided to stop this process. And so I think that in the next year we might be interested just to renew this process. But just for now, we're very well financed. We will not have any problems with liquidity, and we have enough liquidity just to finance our investment program for this year.
And I guess what I'm interested in here, and I'd like to bring Herbert in on this as well, but really, for your company, are there specific advantages to looking at international capital as well? I mean, presume not just the question of availability, as you say, that the company has financing, but are there reasons to look at international markets for you beyond just the amounts of money that you're looking for?
Well, yes, that's not only the problem of availability, that's also a problem, the question of the price of the debt. Do we understand that the price of debt capital, for example, in Russia, it's like 18 to 20% in rubles, and you can get, for example, last year we had a syndicate of foreign banks, and the price is Libor plus 3.3%. You can't get the money as cheap in Russia. That's just impossible. So it's beneficial to be transparent, to be public from this point of view. You can attract cheap, really cheap debt as compared to your just smaller competitors. That's one of our advantages.
Herbert, I mean, this is an interesting point. Here in the UK, everyone's saying, you know, financial conditions are very difficult, raising capital is very difficult, but the point that's being made there as well, potentially it can be more attractive than, or, you know, and cheaper than raising capital inside Russia itself, even though conditions are difficult worldwide.
Sure. No, I think on that point, I would probably mention that certainly the interest from the companies hasn't potentially decreased, yet the discovery of the price and discovery of real state of the companies, the information flows have significantly changed, and I think it is important to have, for example, a very close, a very strong research team that is able to provide you very close insight into what happens in Russia. So right now there's a lot of speculation in media about Russian companies. There's not enough of in-depth research of which companies have survived the crisis or going through the crisis in a relatively good shape, and providing that information to foreign investors, for example, people here. We're also observing a very interesting development where traditional investors into Western markets are now looking at new opportunities. We're opening in Middle East, and we have a presence in Asia. We're seeing significant interest from those new pools of capital to actually now look at Russia. So traditionally they would have gone for investments into US or Western Europe. The whole concept of multipolar world actually has some roots to it, and people are increasingly looking at places like Russia to understand what is available there. But of course, they need to have that insight. They need to have a deep understanding of, what companies, what industries are being impacted and what are not. What presents real value for those investors.